All right, I want to do a quick safety moment before we get started. If we have a fire, audible alarms will sound, and we'll use one of the two exits, either in the front or in the back, and we'll follow the signs to get outside. Once you're outside, please scan your ID badge at one of the mustering card readers. And in the event of a tornado, we will stay here. Any other emergency, please call 3333. Thank you all for being with us today. I want to introduce John Quaid, our executive sponsor for Rise Women's Network.
Thank you, Jacasa, and good morning, everyone. For those of you that I haven't had a chance to meet, my name is John Quaid. I'm our Vice President Controller. I like the joke. I've been here just about 6 years, which at Marathon is not much at all. So I'm still, Don's in the back. He would still say I'm on probation as a new hire. So on behalf of Fiona Laird and myself as executive sponsors for the MPC Arise Women's Employee Network, I'm really excited to welcome you today to the second of 4 events we have planned this month to celebrate women's history. Next week, we have a women's panel that's going to discuss how MPC women show up for our communities, so please look for that. And then the following week, for our Rise Women's Employee Network female members, we have a women's networking skills session. So please look at that and get that on your calendars. Again, as the slogan of the network indicates, right, the objective of this group is to the Arise, right, attract, retain, inspire, support, and empower women. And that's what this team has really been focused on. And frankly, I've been proud just to be a part of kind of supporting the team and getting out of their way as they've been driving some great things over the last several months. So we do hope, I won't steal too much about Erica's speech. We're really excited to have her with us here today. Jocasta will introduce her shortly. But we really hope that after listening to her speech, you leave feeling inspired, right, to discover where is that place where we can spend some time and retreat and do things that we enjoy, right? We're all very busy, but it's important we take the time to do things that position ourselves to enjoy what we're doing. So, again, just some short remarks. With that, I'll turn it over to Jocasta to introduce our speaker for the day. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, John. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Erica before we all get to what we've been waiting for. Erica discovered her passion for outbuildings as the editor of Homes magazine, where she learned that women have sought spaces of repose and control since the dawn of ages. A powerful and poignant history surrounds the tiny rooms, attics, and sheds where women have, since throughout time, have done great things. Whether writing the book Just Waiting to Get Out, launching a business, or discovering a way to have a family and generate income, Women in Their Sacred Spaces is the story of our reverence for what is private and personal, a room of our own. Please join me in welcoming Erica Kotite.
All right, thank you very much. First, I want to make sure my lapel mic is working. Yes, great. And secondly, I just want to say how honored, almost overwhelmed I am to have been invited to this group. I've been practicing Arise Women's Employee Network for the last 24 hours. I think I got it down. It's a great group. I'm so impressed of your mission statement and what you're doing within the company, and that hopefully that example will follow elsewhere to other corporations in our country. She Shed Nation. I have been living in the She Shed Nation for the last 3 years. And the words she sheds immediately to some connote, it's sort of frivolous. There's an alliteration going on there that's very, very gender biased. It's coy. It's catchy. There's a lot of differing opinions about the words she sheds, but what I like to think about she sheds is that they connote contrasts. There's frivolity, or perhaps there's freedom. It represents repose. I love the word repose because it It suggests relaxation, but it also connotes calmness. So there's repose and control. We're going to be talking about women and their space in the world. I loved the Super Bowl commercial. I don't know if any of you caught it, the Oil of Olay Women in Space commercial, just about women being astronauts, done in a very funny way. And I thought, what a fun play that they're talking about, you know, the vast space beyond. And here we are talking about our intimate space, but it's still about space for women. We'll be talking about oppression and opportunity, hard work and leisure, vulnerability and protection, and chaos versus creativity. All of those things, all of those opposites, we as women strive to balance, strive to cope with, and strive to nurture. I'm proud to be part of International Women's Day, which is a little while ago. I think it was March 8th. But I'm also very proud to be part of this month of Women in History. And I adapted what was normally my talk about how to get a she shed, what do they look like, you know, who uses them and how do they use them, and to really think about this in a much broader context, both historically and figuratively in women's lives today. Of course, you'll find out a little bit about all those things just out of curiosity, or maybe you're really thinking about, I really need an extra space. But you'll also, you'll also think about the whole she shed living within the space that you're in and that you have access to. You're also hopefully going to think more about your own place in the world and what that means. You will be thinking about the critical importance of privacy and personal space. We will look at the quest that women have embarked upon since the dawn of humankind, and that is, again, the search for repose and control. And we're going to be, hopefully, at the end of this, more mindful of the creative, emotional, and physical benefits of she shed living. So really, the she shed is a statement about carving out and appreciating your own personal space as much as it is about a cute backyard outbuilding. So how the heck did I become an authority on she sheds? That's what happens when you major in English. Yeah. I graduated with a degree in English literature from UCLA, and I immediately wanted to be in the world of magazines, like 21 million other girls my age. So I went off to New York, and I ended up in PR because I needed to pay my rent. Very hard to break into magazines then, and of course there aren't a lot of magazines around now, but it was a lovely field, and I actually ended up transferring back to San Francisco and finally Los Angeles, where I became editor of Entrepreneur magazine, and I remained there for 8 years. Kind of ironic in that I had absolutely no experience launching a business. But by writing about it and researching it and interviewing, you do tend to learn a lot. And what's really exciting is that here now, many years later, I do own my own business. I got the great opportunity of writing these books because I networked and I kept in touch with my former colleagues. The homes magazines that I worked for were Victorian Homes and Romantic Homes. And Victorian Homes, as you know, because you have all these beautiful 19th century buildings in your town, have a lot of really cool outbuildings, carriage houses, etc. And I started getting more excited about shooting the potting shed than I did about the Queen Anne. And so I kind of got this rep for liking tiny structures. And so my former colleague went into book publishing, and this was many years later, and she remembered that. And when they were brainstorming about a book on this new phenomenon of she sheds, and they were wondering who could write such a thing, I know the perfect person. And so I became the author of She Sheds, A Room of Your Own, and then She Sheds Style, and then finally the DIY Guide, which is sort of the best of both worlds. And that's been my world for the last few years. That's me in my she shed. Very small. We have a tiny backyard. I did a lot of book editing alongside of the books on she sheds. And I also want to point out that I was a very excited member of the Hopewell Township Preservation Committee when Tim and I lived in New Jersey for 4 years. No one really knows exactly where the term she shed began, but there are probably several factors leading to the movement. It's definitely a 21st century term. In June 2010, the New York Times ran what is now a famous in our circles article about Sandy Foster, who converted an old hunting cabin in the Catskills into this wonderful Carpenter Gothic, what she called a cottage, and what the New York Times called a cottage, 9 feet by 14 feet. It's cottage, cabin, refuge, getaway, sanctuary. Somewhere along the line, those terms led to the she shed, and it stuck. Garden or potting sheds are very common. Most people know what they are, and they've been around a very long time. My theory is that these are the grandmothers of modern-day she sheds. And actually, gardening is still probably the #1 occupation of a she shed, followed closely by pursuing art, whether it's canvas, mixed media, pottery, crafts, etc. And finally, she sheds are the gender-biased antidote to man caves, offering women a place to go that is all theirs. Men, children, and meddling family or neighbors are by invitation only. She sheds come in a variety of levels of rusticity and elegance. My partner hates that I start with this incredibly rustic shed in my slideshow. She's, Erica, we have lots more, really more refined sheds that we ought to show, but somehow I'm just really partial to this one. I just love that it's old and reused and made cheerful with natural things, so I keep it in there. They are always detached structures, at least the literal definition of a she shed. They are always in the backyard, and they are always created, designed, and used by a woman. So you will see an incredible level of style and detail in the designs. Glittering mini chandeliers, soft area rugs, upholstered chaises and couches, artwork, and also a remarkable level of order and organization. It really isn't about dumping thousands of dollars into a frivolous pursuit. Well, maybe this one. It's, again, about repose and control. This one is somewhere in Washington State, and it's one of my favorites. With she sheds, there are very few rules, but there is at least one: not for storage. They are meant to look like this or like that, but they are about harmony and having the things you love around you. Some of you in the room may know that my favorite author is Jane Austen. Jane Austen, for those of you who don't know, was an early 19th century writer in England and wrote 6 of probably the most incredible novels on the planet. Whether it was, in those times, whether it was the stables or the smoking room, the library or the den, men often found a place where they could retreat and demand privacy and quiet. Women didn't have such an easy time finding that. As mothers, sisters, daughters, and caregivers, they were rarely tolerated to be out of reach to the needs of the family. I'm going to be commenting a little bit on an article by Carol Goodman called A Home of Her Own, how Jane Austen found the space to write. And this is the website booksbywomen.org. Jane Austen had the good luck to have her father's approbation and his library. For her 19th birthday, he gave her a writing desk, a small wooden box that opened into a sloped writing surface and contained compartments that could be locked. A medium-sized wooden box is not exactly Virginia Woolf's famous room of one's own, but it does open up a space in which to write, and most importantly represents a vote of confidence from her father, the male head of the household, that her writing is valuable. That gift is followed in 1795 by the addition of a drawing room, which was a converted bedroom adjoining Jane and Cassandra's bedroom. It contained a bookcase, Jane's pianoforte, and work boxes for sewing and trimming. Although it was not a space dedicated to writing, it did offer the privacy in which Jane could write. And write she did. Between 1795 and 1799, Jane Austen wrote the first drafts of Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, and Northanger Abbey. In 1800, when Jane was 25 years old, her father, George Austen, decided to retire and cede the living at Steventon to his son, James. This meant that Mr. and Mrs. Austen and their two dependent children, Jane and Cassandra, had to leave the rectory. Jane wasn't just losing her childhood home. She was losing the place where she wrote and all semblance of the routine that had enabled her to write. For 8 years, the family never really had a settled place to live. Clearly, though, she never gave up. She persisted. The hardships she faced in this period shape and inform her later writing. The loss of home, financial insecurity for women particularly, and the marginalization of spinsters will all resonate through her later works. Perhaps, too, these discouraging years forced her to make a conscious decision about how important it was to continue writing and to look to writing as a means of bettering her financial situation. In 1809, her brother Edward finally made arrangements to give his mother and two sisters a permanent home, a cottage near one of his properties in Chawton. A stable environment with space and time allotted to the task, freedom from onerous responsibilities and financial worries, and a few people who believe in and encourage you. Perhaps most importantly, the writer herself needs to believe that her writing deserves a place in the world outside the corners and margins of the drawing room. Then she can write 6 of the most beloved and brilliant novels on the planet. I'm going to talk again more about women in the historical context, and you'll note that these places are not necessarily the precursors of she sheds. They are mostly small spaces, shared spaces, but they are the physical area that a woman lived most of her life. In the United States, outbuildings were an important part of the agricultural landscape, as I referred to earlier. The most common structure is the barn, of course, accompanied by stables, corn cribs, and woodsheds. Additionally, detached kitchen buildings began to appear on mid and highly affluent farms, especially in warmer climates, to keep the odor and heat out of the main house. Smokehouses, creameries, and ice houses are other common outbuildings. Women were very often the keepers of poultry and would consider the hen house their domain. Some people call them hen huts, by the way. She sheds hen huts is another word for them. They also were the milkers as well in many cases, and so the dairy barn would be part of their daily pilgrimages. The Homestead Act of 1862, not sure how many of you know this, but men who never took arms against the federal government, immigrants, freed black slaves, and women were allowed to file a claim. And according to my research, about 12% of homestead claims were filed by women. Women joined husbands or homesteaded themselves as a rare opportunity to have their own financial control. Homesteading was hard and often lonely, but for some, prairie living had a tonic effect. Homesteads often started out as nothing much more than a one-room shed and then grew as the owner's fortunes did. I looked up the size of the structure that you had to have, and the one I found that I think is about accurate is 12 feet by 14 feet, so very small. This from the Encyclopedia of the Great Plains. Women who took homesteads tended to work out as well. Many of them pursued careers as teachers, nurses, seamstresses, and domestic workers. But a few followed less traditional paths, such as journalism or photography. Many eventually married, but some remained single. Those who achieved economic success used their resources in a variety of ways. Some stayed on their homestead and accumulated additional land. Others sold their holdings and invested elsewhere. In many ways, women who homesteaded resemble contemporary women. Their schedules were demanding, requiring flexibility, ingenuity, and endurance. Most would be considered community movers and shakers, as their initiatives were instrumental in building schools, churches, and other community institutions. So this slide is about Eleanor Pruitt Stewart, a writer and a homesteader. And I'll note here that it's the writers of that era, the women writers who somehow managed to write their diaries and their journals and get published. They're the records that we have. They're the famous ones, even though they were just another person trying to make it back then. In 1909, Eleanor Pruitt, who was recently widowed and the mother of an infant daughter, answered an ad to be a homesteader's housekeeper. And this actually is all from wyohistory.org, from Wyoming History. Clyde Stewart hired her immediately, and Eleanor and her daughter moved from Colorado to Wyoming. Eleanor also decided to file for her own 160-acre homestead adjoining her new employers. Not long afterwards, Eleanor and Clyde were married, and their two homesteads and houses were adjoined. Besides her hard work on the farm and having 5 more children, Eleanor found another gift, writing. Her letters about Wyoming and homesteading life to her former employer in Colorado became the base of a series in the Atlantic Monthly and ultimately a book in 1914 called Letters of a Woman Homesteader. The letters were frank, vivid, and perceptive. To me, she wrote on January 23rd, 1913, homesteading is the solution to all of poverty's problems, but I realize that temperament has much to do with the success in any undertaking, and persons afraid of coyotes and work and loneliness had better let ranching alone. At the same time, any woman who can stand her own company, can see the beauty of the sunset, loves growing things, and is willing to put as much time at careful labor as she does over the washtub, will certainly succeed, will have independence, plenty to eat all the time, and a home of her own in the end. Now I want to talk about a structure that actually looks very, very much like a she shed. It's one room, it's small, often doesn't have a lot of windows. These are slave cabins, of course. These I picture here are at Magnolia Plantation in Charleston, South Carolina. In the United States, black enslaved women toiled by day and then cared for their families in one-room cabins at night. There was nothing glittering or sumptuous about their plight. They learned to make do and considered this space as their home. Joseph McGill, who is a program officer for the National Trust for Historic Preservation, founded the Slave Dwelling Project to increase our understanding of life as a slave in our country and how the impact continues to be felt through today. Part of how he does this is through hosting sleepovers in restored slave cabins on plantations throughout the South. The opportunity to disseminate the history of the enslaved people at Magnolia Plantation has recently become more important. Important because it is trending that some people come to plantations and get upset because they hear about the history of enslaved people and they have the Gone with the Wind sugar-coated mint julep version of history that is being challenged, and it's hard. Their complaints have gone viral. More historic sites, north and south, are changing their narratives to include the stories of enslaved people, something they should have been doing all along. Black women continue to seek out community and sanctuary in their lives. And one of those places is, believe it or not, the beauty salon. I think all of us seek out sanctuary in there, I would imagine. Consider this a communal she shed, where cares and worries are shed for a blissful hour or two. And I'll read this comment from Roshan Meadows Fernandez from Birdie.com. Heading to the hair salon gives me only 1 to 2 hours I have to escape work and parenthood. It serves as a much-needed reset for the stresses that accompany my life as a black femme. Not only that, the physical confidence I feel afterward renews my strength to take on the world. I've seen regular therapists before. They ask their strategic questions, doing their best to take in as much data on who you are as possible. The goals of traditional talk therapy are to discover what causes my thoughts and actions through this strange one-way communication method. But I find that the environment is so contrived, the relationship is little more than skin deep. My town is less than 1% black, so finding a therapy with cultural competency is literally impossible. The therapy that takes place during a hair appointment is very different. It's much more personal. Both my hairdresser and I are black women in a town that lacks racial diversity. We're both doing our best to navigate military spousehood. We understand one another, and the conversations are seldom one way. Virginia Woolf gave us a wonderful, wonderful line that probably all of you know. A woman needs money and a room of her own in order to write. Love her or hate her, she is recognized as one of the most innovative writers of the 20th century. She is known as the author of Mrs. Dalloway and To the Lighthouse, and she also was a prolific writer of essays, diaries, letters, and biographies. Her work captures the fast-changing world of the 1920s, exploring the subconscious, time, perception, the city, and the impact of war. Her stream of consciousness technique brought the inner lives of her characters to life like no author had done before. She wrote Jacob's Room, Orlando, To the Lighthouse, Mrs. Dalloway, and several other works at this desk, and it was in a wooden lodge at the bottom of the garden at Monk's House, which was the name of her home in the English countryside. So I was excited to find that I knew she had said a room of your own, that saying, and of course that's the tagline of my first book, but I actually did not know until this meeting that she actually did have a little she shed. So I was very happy to find that out. I'm commenting on things I found from the National Aviation Hall of Fame here. As you all know, Anne Morrow Lindbergh was the wife of Charles Lindbergh. A consummate diarist, Anne recorded all her impressions of the Canada to China trip that she made with her husband, Charles. When North to the Orient was published in 1935 and immediately became a bestseller, Anne had found her niche. Her destiny was to become America's poetic voice for aviation. And I'm ashamed to say this, I did not know that she was an aviator too. Shame on me. In 1928, she and her husband Charles traced the first transcontinental airmail passenger service routes, participated in the Pan American expansion in the Caribbean, and made aerial observation of Mayan ruins. And in 1930, she was the first woman to receive a U.S. glider pilot license. Some of her writings included Gift from the Sea, wherein she took shells from the beach and used them as a touch point for reflections on the lives of women in American history. She spent many years in Connecticut and used a small shed on the property as her writing studio. You'll see now that, again, she sheds are more about a state of mind than an actual one-room structure. In my research, I found out about a wonderful thing called the Hollywood Studio Club. In 1926, this club opened near Sunset Boulevard, and it provided newly arrived and usually very poor ingenues a safe place to stay and a few meals a day while pursuing acting careers in early Hollywood. Most importantly, it provided these vulnerable, young, beautiful women with a social network and a support system in a world dominated by strong and not so principled white men. Some of the names you might know: Rita Moreno, Ayn Rand, Kim Novak, Marilyn Monroe. This is certainly not a she shed, but it's a symbol of the often life-changing importance a woman's place is for a woman's sanity, well-being, and ambition. Strange name for a wonderful institution in Saratoga Springs, New York. How many of you have heard of Yaddo? Okay, I only did because I wrote about it when I was at Victorian Homes. Yaddo is this is a kind of a modern room that they have there, but it's actually, if you look at it online, yaddo.org, it's a huge stone mansion, beautiful, beautiful park and grounds too, if you're ever in Saratoga Springs. Its mission is to nurture the creative process by providing an opportunity for artists to work without interruption in a supportive environment. It offers residencies to professional creative artists from all nations and backgrounds working in one or more of the following disciplines: choreography, film, literature, musical composition, painting, performance art, photography, sculpture, and video. Artists are selected by panels of other professional artists without regard to financial status. Residencies last from 2 weeks to 2 months and include room, board, and a studio. An art lover throughout her life, Katrina Trask, who lived in the 19th century, was the driving creative force behind Yaddo. This Saratoga estate is known across the globe for its unique beauty and tranquility, perfect for artists and writers, and perfect for the woman who inspired its initial success. Describing their prediction of Yaddo's bright future, the Trasks once wrote, "We desire to found here a permanent home to which may come from time to time for rest and refreshment authors, painters, sculptors, musicians, and other artists, both men and women, few in number and chosen for creative gifts, and the purpose to make these gifts useful to the world." Back to our rustic shed. I call this Where She Creates. My partner Sabrina and I try to promote she sheds as a place of business, a place of a small business, a home-based business, creative outlet, peace and quiet. We've known people from many different industries who have worked in a detached structure in their backyard. Liz Ridgway lives in Kent, in the UK, and she is a very talented textile designer. Her website, Denison Fielding, offers a variety of garden products in the textiles that she creates, and a very unusual but very lucrative business, those little deck chairs, and they call them something else in the UK, but I can't remember. Anyway, they're all done in her wonderful, cheerful fabrics, and she cannot fulfill the demand for outdoor weddings using those wonderful, creative deck chairs as part of the gathering. She also has 2 very energetic young boys that she's raising and managing to juggle everything. Tamara Armstrong was in my first book. I discovered her. She's in Queensland in the Gold Coast area of Australia. Lives on a mountaintop. You can't see it, but her she shed is on high posts, and she has this incredible view of the mountain that she lives nearby. She's the mother of a young daughter. She's a large canvas artist and a teacher, and she made herself an incredible space with lots of natural light, and she brings in clients and sells her artwork there, as well as holds very small classes, I think 3 to 4 students at a time, to teach the art of art. Stacia Deutsch. Stacia is a very recent client of mine. She is a best-selling author, as you can see, lives in a rural part of Southern California, and she actually moved to this new place with her husband, who's a horse enthusiast, and they started having all sorts of chaos in their house, and she decided that it was time to do something about it. So I will now try my technology here and see if I can get to a little story about Stacia. Sorry.
Hello, I'm Sabrina, and
This is Erica Kotai. We're with She Shed Living.
we're just here and thrilled to see Stacia She Shed
Yay, finally.
in Temecula.
Stacia had it all landscaped, added this wonderful fence around it so the dogs can come in with her.
So inviting. Oh my gosh.
Yep. I'm Stacia Deutsch, and I'm a children's book author. My series range from Blast to the Past, which is an original series about kids who time travel and meet famous people in history. Most recently, I was on the New York Times bestseller list for a book in conjunction with Penguin and Girls Who Code called The Friendship Code. So Erica understood that I needed a space that was quiet and a little bit bohemian and would have a lot of good creative energy. So you can see the windows and the glass, and the view looks out to the horses at the barn. I have a desk for myself with my printer. I have a couch, a chair for my guests if someone wants to come and visit me, though they can't stay very long because, you know, I have to work. Sabrina did a lot of the interior design. Like, between Erica and Sabrina, they pretty much did all the interior design. They would send me pictures of furniture that would fit the space, that was exactly what I needed. For writing, I like to sit in a chair and I like to have my feet up and my laptop on my lap. So we had this huge discussion. Did the chair need arms or no arms? And it was almost too late before I was like, no, I need arms. I like to kind of swoosh into the corner here. Like a little like that with my, there, that's perfect. With my laptop. And I'll snuggle up. So this chair is amazing and I wish that you could feel it. I wanted my own books, like the books that I had written, to surround me because that feels really good and very empowering. On a little bit of a confession, I was kind of going through a quiet period where I wasn't creating so much, and so my husband was the one who was like, do the shed! Like, once we found the She Shed Living, like everything just took off and I'm just super happy. I've already worked in here. I'm working on a new mystery novel, and I need to do a sample chapter, and I'm also working on a romance novel, which I hope my agent will be able to sell because I love it.
Actually, like 2 of them, so there's another one.
Oh, I like this one. This is awesome. Tree of Life.
Yeah, that's cool.
We placed the mezuzah to dedicate my She Shed. Okay, so it's Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu likvoa mezuzah, which basically says, we praise you, O God, who commands us, with the placement of the mezuzah.
That's beautiful.
And so the mezuzah will protect the she shed.
I want to put one on
And all the writing that's in it.
Give a little shout out to my cinematographer, Timothy Hayes, standing there in the back of the room. So this beautiful structure with the picket fence around it, it's all part landscaped as part of the backyard. It's just far enough from the house to be far away enough, but it still allows for basically a home-based business to operate. All right, so I got a chance to tour part of your building, and I see the structure of the offices and the cubicles. It's very progressive. It's, I think, what a lot of it is. I mean, it's in the last few years in the corporate, when I was in the corporate world, I mean, that's what everybody was going towards. I will say that I had a really nice glass office, really big, and then, you know, we had to like change everything around and cluster people differently, and it totally made sense. It did, but you know, you win some things, you lose some things. I'll leave it at that. But anyway, mostly what I talk about when I have my presentations is, okay, how can you get one? Let's talk, you know, brass tacks here. But what I'm going to talk about to you a little bit now is showing you or maybe exploring with you how to make the most of the space where you are. Okay, and so whether it's your cubicle or that spare room in your house or your back porch, this section is what's going to help you explore what's possible. All right, so elements of scale. She sheds are small, cubicles are small, but that doesn't mean by thinking small you can't have the ultimate in comfort. Not sure if a small sofa is going to fit in your cubicles, but again, just thinking differently, thinking about, you know, maybe even having something like a pillow on your chair, or maybe covering it with a throw, or and I'll show you a few more examples later that might be more practical. But this definitely is something you can do in small spaces in your house. Even if you, let's say you share a home office with your spouse, you know, doing scaled down and cozy furnishings might be something that is relevant for you. Okay, I'm obsessed with footstools and ottomans, and so in my second book, She Shed Style, we did a DIY on a mod suitcase ottoman. And the neat thing about this, there's storage in there. You can open up that suitcase and stash your stuff, right? But seriously, you know, putting your feet up. I notice a lot of you, you know, you all have adjustable workspaces. But if you do like to sit down, you know, raising your feet, of course, is a good thing. And having a bit of color with something like this might be something to think about. Jocasta took me and a number of others to Swan House Tea Salon, and it was wonderful. And so I searched for an image that would evoke that feeling of intimacy and taking a real pause. Possibly devoting a corner to whether tea's your thing, or maybe even, you know, women will often have, I don't want to call it an altar or a shrine, but it's more of a memory space. The new LED candles are awesome. They look so real. I'm not going to even condone live flame candles, but have, you know, evoking the feeling of that kind of intimacy and maybe even a little bit of nostalgia for the past, if that's your thing. But surrounding yourself with visually appealing and restful items and maybe creating a little break area for yourself in your space, your workspace, or your private space. Shelving, little display shelves, they're very easy to do. Even on those, those felt walls, they're very, there's so many things at Hobby Lobby and places you can go where you can just hang cute little shelves. And I know that seems sort of like, so what, but first of all, it adds a lot of aesthetic value to your space. You're staring at those walls many hours, wherever it is. And so doing things like this actually makes a great impact. I'll comment here, this woman on the left is my sister-in-law, and we lost my brother very young to cancer at 49, and this photo was taken a year later when Tim and I went up to Santa Cruz to help her build a kit shed. If you look at chapter 7 in She Sheds a Room of Your Own, you might see a few people you know in there building a kit shed and making mistakes along the way. Anyway, these just very simple shelves just between the studs of the shed. These were bottles that my brother collected, and Karen had them in a box, didn't want to look at them. This was the perfect place to put them, where she could enjoy them and let them see the light of day again and have her memories. These spaces are yours and yours alone, and that's a really powerful thing. All right, chandeliers. I was thinking, how could we suspend a chandelier in that cubicle? There's probably policies against it, but how cute is that? But anyway, I show a table standing chandelier-esque light fixture. Task lighting never looks so good. Task lighting doesn't have to be metal and minimalist. I mean, if that's your thing, that's great. But if you want a little touch of femininity, a touch of the past, a touch of glam, things like that add a lot to your space, and they add light to your space. To me, bunting is the quintessential she shed symbol. Every drawing you see of a she shed, there's a slash of bunting on the corner, and I love it. It's probably because of the whole UK roots of potting sheds. These are actually at Liz Ridgway's Kent shed, and so I just wanted to show you these strings of bunting are so easy to make. You can use fabric that is important to you, like pajamas that your kid wore that you can't bear to throw away because it's such a cute pattern. I mean, you can make really neat, fun, bright bunting and just festoon it across your walls. It really is a wonderful and easy touch. How am I doing? All right. So I ask this question a lot because my business rests on she sheds. Are these things a fad, or is there something more? And because this presentation is different and I've shown you the importance of women's space in a historical context, I know that is definitely not a fad. But as far as the actual literal she sheds themselves, we'll see. On a little bit of a more serious note, you probably all heard about the fires in Northern California. Well, there's been a couple of years where we've had terrible fires up there. This one in particular was the Tubbs fire in Sonoma County. And a really lovely barn raising, if you will, took place 4 or 5 months after the fire. Whole neighborhoods were wiped out. And so here on the parking lot of actually my old high school, a lot of volunteers got together and built just very, very basic storage sheds for the homeowners who were trying to rebuild on their property. And if you think about it, they're looking at their land and they're wrangling with their insurance companies, and they're seeing nothing there. And suddenly a very humble but practical and heartening structure is set upon their property, and it gives them hope. I'll quote just a little bit from the article in the Press Democrat. Erica Ringkor didn't expect Saturday to be an emotional day, but Ringkor couldn't help but cry while standing with her 3 young children among hundreds of volunteers who came to Pioneer High School to construct tool sheds for families like hers who lost their homes in the October wildfires. Ringkor's Coffee Park home is in the process of being rebuilt. She expects the framing will happen next week and construction will be finished by Christmas. The shed, which is intended to store construction materials, is a simple gesture, but one that carries great weight. It's about security and the hope of what's coming, Ringkor said. It's also completely overwhelming and brings so much hope to see so many people come build a shed for somebody they don't even know. She sheds are definitely not tiny houses. The tiny housing movement is a completely different animal. A tiny house offers a complete home for someone who mostly does not have the means to buy a full-size house. I mean, some people actively choose the downsized life, and it's great. But this movement also helps, in particular, single women, whether divorced or widowed or otherwise, in their 50s and 60s that have not been able to save up a lot of money and need a place to be independent. And this tiny house movement fills a great void. This actually is my cousin's tiny house in Santa Rosa. She's in her early 60s, has had some disability issues most of her life, but now pays a small mortgage and is independent and very, very proud of her new place. And as I said earlier, hopefully the fad is not a fad, because my partner Sabrina and I have built a company out of those books and out of that love that I have for outbuildings and out of that degree in English literature so many years ago. Our company helps design, install custom sheds made out of reclaimed lumber and recycled windows. We also have a gallery and a shop in an old restored Macy's building in Laguna Hills. We have a Facebook group of about 700 women who, whether or not they even have a she shed, just love showing off what they have and how much they enjoy that space to themselves. And we also have a line of paint. It's chalk paint for exterior surfaces, and it's called She Shades. And we have high hopes for She Shades, the same as we have high hopes for continuing to help women find a room of their own. So I'd like to leave you with the words repose and control. Not control in an oppressive way. It's control that is a positive, that you feel that you can think about the things that you need to think about. Think about that minute that you come home from work and you walk into your bedroom. Generally mine is there's nobody else in there. Shut the door. It's probably just for a second to put your stuff down and do whatever, but think about that feeling next time you feel it, and think about where you are, and really try to carry that with you as much as you can. I guarantee you it enhances your life. It enhances you in the times where it's chaotic and you have no control over that. But you can carry that with you if you know what it looks like and what it feels like. Thank you very much. Did I leave anything uncovered that you have a burning curiosity about?
Yeah, Erica, thank you. That was great. I was wondering, looking through all those, I didn't see any wine in there anywhere. And I know I know if my wife had a she shed, she'd have to have some wine racks, and I just.
You are so funny. Well, you know what? I have a few hidden slides. And I'm going to show you one right now that answers your question. And the best part about that is there is a DIY step-by-step in she shed style that tells you how to make that drop-down bar in your she shed. Yeah, I've got a little help, yeah. You're welcome. Anybody else? You guys have some things like frost lines and things like that you have to worry about for. Oh, yes, sorry.
Pressure mine's so much a question, but
Yeah.
first I want to thank you for being here today, and then second, I think it's really important that we remember to take care of ourselves as people. We do so much here, we do so much at home, and it's really important that we do take that time to ourselves to refresh and recollect so we can be better wherever we are, whether it's at work, whether it's at home. And your message today, I think, encourages us to do that, and empowers us to do that, and also inspires us in how we can do it. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I agree.
Hey, Erica.
Hi.
So you are running a really female business in an industry that could be perceived as masculine when it comes to construction and design of structures. So how have you navigated that as a female-oriented company? Have you had any challenges, and how did you overcome them?
We have. Most of the contracting work that we don't actually, Sabrina and I mean, we have building skills and we do assist on the builds, but the sheds that we sell are pre-built and come shipped in wall and roof panels. However, first of all, it's hard to explain to anyone, male or female. A lot of people still don't know what she sheds are. And a lot of women who come by our gallery and see the beautiful craftsmanship of the ones we sell sometimes have a male along who knows how to build, and thinks he can build it in for $200 and in 2 hours. And there's a little bit of, and it's hard because this is the thing. I mean, this is going to sound very stereotypical, but I'm going to say it anyway because this is how I was raised. I mean, I was raised having just no building and repair skills whatsoever. Some of you women probably, a lot of you are engineers, I would think, but either case, maybe a lot of you do know how to use power tools and actually build things yourself, and that's great. But it's mostly been a male domain. One of the things I found challenging was when Tim was helping me photograph the projects for my second book, he doesn't like to pause when he's building something. Like, I'll go around the corner to get my camera and he'll have gone on and I did not get step one photographed. And so he has to reverse engineer and pull it apart so that I can get the shot. I'm being a little facetious here, but I think there's a little bit of Mars and Venus. She sheds also seem very, again, we struggle with the stereotype. It's, chandeliers and furry throws and slippers and, that's why I was really excited to have this talk, because I did want to talk about personal space in broader context. But yeah, actually the construction part of it, it's hard. I wish so much that I had, got my contractor's license. I love to build. It's very frustrating to not be able to do it. But most of the men that we've worked with have been super courteous, very patient. So it's been a good experience so far.
Don't you have a woman that builds for you up there in San Luis Obispo?
Very good question, Tim. Yes. You're right. You're right. Dana O'Brien is one of the owners of the company they have their own mill up in San Luis Obispo. She pretty much runs the show and is a wonderful, wonderful person to work with. She knows a lot about sheds and small structures, and they have this huge inventory of like 6,000 windows and doors that we pull from, and so she's a great role model, a great role model. And I'm actually working on a post for my website right now on how to improve your building skills and the different resources like Habitat for Humanity has, and some of the classes that women can go to. Just basic skills. You know, saws for me are very scary. Power drill, I'm starting to, you know, I got that. Saws scare the crap out of me. You know, so you learn about safety, you learn about, you know, how to do it methodically, you learn which saw does what. So I'm excited about running more content in the website about, hey, you can do it yourself.
Yeah, thanks again, Erica, but I did have a quick question. Can you share one of your favorite stories of a space that you helped create that inspired or empowered a woman, and what that looked like through that transformation?
Yes. This story is not a story about one of our sheds. It's a story of a very close friend of mine, and I shared a little bit, I think, of it yesterday at the tea house. This woman really needed a place of her own. She was a few years into her second marriage. Some issues, some struggles. The big one being she moved into his house, and he had been there for 20 years, and really had it the way he wanted it, and really didn't want to change anything. So there was a lot of struggle with her feeling at home in her new house. So I said, why don't you build something in the backyard? Huge, beautiful property in Santa Rosa. And so she did, and then her husband enthusiastically took part, and they built a beautiful shed. I think I have a picture of it. Let's see. In the backyard. She's a clinical psychologist and an author, and she now has a place that's part of her home with her husband, but this is her shed. Gorgeous, under a huge oak. But it can be marriage therapy. You know, it doesn't solve everything, but you've all had it where someone's crowding in your space, whether you're cooking dinner or trying to read or get caught up on stuff, and whether it's your kids or your dog or whatever. I mean, it messes with your mind. It really does. And we don't want to be whiners. I mean, everybody has to deal with that. But you can do things to ameliorate that. So this story was great because it has really helped a lot. And she got a gorgeous little space of her own too.
So I have two quick questions. First, do you ship to Ohio? Second, in your little slides behind the scenes, do you actually have a she shed yourself, and do you have a picture of it?
Oh, yes. We don't ship to Ohio, but we have some ideas for expansion that we're working on, which hopefully will help us to fly out of the realm of Southern California. It's a really high-touch, high-labor endeavor. I mean, we try not to construct on site, so we're transporting everything. The builders we work with pay a living wage, which is great, great. But it just means margins are really thin. There's just a lot of things that make it hard. So we're looking for ways to maybe go into maybe more new material sheds and have a couple of different lines, hopefully. As far as my shed, let's see. There's my shed. Super cute. Tim and I built it. We had a lot of scraps lying around the house. Tim never throws anything out. Just puts it behind the garbage cans. And we found that little door. It had to be a really narrow, I think it's like a 28 27, 28-inch wide door. We bought it on Craigslist in Culver City, cut it in half, put a ledge on it. Oh, that DIY for a Dutch door is also in she shed style. And you can see all the different colored 4x4s because we had used them on other projects, and we just tried to use what we had. Those beautiful leaded glass windows were a splurge. Found those at an antique store and got those restored. But it's 6x6. It's got a chair, it's got books, it's got a bunch of windows, it's got a lamp and a little table, and that's about it. And a lawnmower and a hedger. I just ran an Instagram story. I'm like, hey, who put this hedger in here? So. Go back to my slide on it's not for storage, not for storage. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much to Erica for that wonderful message. I'm sure we all learned a lot and all have new ideas to take back with us. And thank you, all of you, for attending and being engaged in this conversation. We really appreciate it. Now we've got a little bit of an Oprah moment. If you look underneath your chairs, some of you will have winning tickets for one of Erica's signed books. So I'm glad that created so much excitement. If you did pull a winning ticket, if you'll meet us up front, we have a signed book for you. Erica has also generously said that she will stick around and take pictures or answer questions, or if you'd just like to meet her, you may come on up. We've got a little bit of time, so she will be here. Again, I'd like to thank you all for your time today, and we hope that you will join us next week for our women's panel. And with that, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.